गवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देश तारिणे जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय Hare Krishna. We'll be discussing from Bhagavad Gita as it is, chapter 2, text 48. Yogastha kuru karmani sangam tyaktva dhananjaya siddhya siddhyoh samo bhutva samatvam yoga uchyate. Now in the previous verse, Krishna explained Karmanyevadhikaraste ma phaleshu kadachana ma karma phala heturbhur mate sangostu akarmani. You have to perform your prescribed duty, karmani, that much you have adhikara. You are entitled to do that much. But don't try to enjoy the result. Ma phaleshu kadachana. You are not entitled to the fruits of action. Ma karma phala heturbhur. In that way, don't become the responsible for producing the fruit. So in this verse, Krishna explained, if that is the case, if I should not take the fruit, to whom I should give the fruit? That Krishna explains, Yogasthaha, Yogasthaha Kuru Karmani. You do your activity by situated in yoga. And that Prabhupada explains, yoga means yoga indriya samyama. The first step of yoga is to control your senses. And why? Why to control the senses? To repose the senses on Krishna. That is the purpose of controlling the senses. People don't know, even the yogis, so-called yogis, don't know why they are controlling the senses. Even though yoga principle says in the Shastra, yoga indriya samyama. In any kind of yoga, the first step is you have to control the senses. But for what purpose? Dhyanavastita tadgatena manasa pasyanti yam yogino. Bhagavatam explains that the purpose of controlling the senses is to repose and meditate on Krishna within our mind. So control the senses and meditate on Krishna. That is called Yogastaha. And Prabhupada also explains the third thing, which is if you do the activities as prescribed by Krishna, that is Yogastaha, real Yogastaha. In other words, our karmani has to be done in Yogastaha, which means control the senses, think of Krishna and act for Krishna. That is called Yogastaha Kuru Karmani. Sangam Tyaktva. By giving up the attachment to that work, O Dhananjaya. Your personal attachment should not be there. I like it or not. Whether siddhi asiddhyoh samo bhutva. Whether there will be victory or defeat. Perfection or imperfection. Gain or loss. Samatvam yoga uchyate. One should treat all of that equally. Because it's not for my purpose. Krishna will take care of the gain or loss, victory or defeat, profit or loss, fame or infamy, perfection or imperfection. So don't be attached to that work on the personal basis. Let it be done by Krishna. So this is called Yogastaha Kuru Karmani. So in our Srila Prabhupada, his spiritual master, Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he said in one of his famous talks the importance of Srimad Bhagavatam. He said there is no need to study any other literature as Srimad Bhagavatam is inclusive of everything. And in Srimad Bhagavatam, there is a word, Susrushubihi. It refers to persons who are attached to service. So similarly here it is said, when we said Sangam Tyaktva, give up attachment to your work, it doesn't mean give up attachment to working altogether. It means give up, be attached to serving Krishna. Don't be attached to that particular activity. But if you are attached to the service of Krishna, serving Krishna as the principle, you can take up any activity for the pleasure of Krishna. That is called Susrushubihi. Refers to persons who are attached to service. Like in Bhagavad Gita, we'll see in 4th chapter. Tadvidhi pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya upadeksyanti te jnanam gnaninastatvadarshinaha. It means one should approach a bona fide spiritual master, offer obeisances to him, inquire from him, and render service to him. Render service. So if we serve a horse, we will be known as a sahisha, a caretaker of a horse. If we serve dogs, in Sanskrit, we will be called a bhangi, or caretaker of dogs. If we work in an iron workshop, we will be called a blacksmith. If we work with gold, we will be known as goldsmith. And if we work for Krishna, we will be known as a devotee, a bhakta. So people of this world are busy accumulating things for their sense gratification. So instead of considering Srimad Bhagavatam as one of these things for our sense gratification, we should lead our life based on the teachings of Srimad Bhagavatam. So one should take inspiration from Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam to become attached to the service of the Lord. And Krishna, his desire is that we become attached to him more and more. And one who takes to Krishna consciousness, Krishna encourages them. In the case of Narada Muni, you see, Narada Muni, his mother, she was raising him alone. She was a maid servant. She was not from a rich background, poor background, and an ordinary woman. And she was raising him alone, this boy, Narada Muni. But the good thing was, they were serving these Bhakti Vedantas, these great devotees of Krishna, who were taking a break from travel during these 4 months of rainy season. So she was serving them, and this boy was serving them. And when they honored their food, the prasadam, by their permission, he would also take the remnants. He would hear from them, their discussions. And the power of the prasadam, particularly the Mahaprasadam, the remnants of the prasadam left by a pure devotee, is so potent that it awakens our Krishna consciousness. Bhakta Pada Jala, Bhakta Bhukta Avasesha, and the water that washed the lotus feet of a pure devotee, the prasadam that is left by the pure devotee, and the Bhakta Pada Dhuli, the dust of the lotus feet of a pure devotee, Eitin Mahabala, it is said in Chaitanya Charitamrita. They are very potent. Mama Virya Samvido, if you associate with devotees and partake these things of a pure devotee, the Krishna consciousness will become quickly arisen in our hearts. And that's what happened in the case of Narada Muni. And fortunately or unfortunately, fortunately for his spiritual progress, unfortunately for his material situation, his mother dies being bitten by a snake. And already a young boy, and he becomes even more precarious in his material situation. But because of the spiritual advancement he made, he takes it as Krishna's will that he become more and more dependent on Krishna. And so he starts to meditate on Krishna by the progress he made. And with the power of meditation, with the bhakti he possessed, he pleased Krishna so much so that Krishna appears, he was meditating and Krishna appears in his heart. And Narada Muni, the boy, he starts to become so ecstatic looking at this form of the Lord. And all kinds of ecstasies flow from his body. He's constantly meditating on the Lord. But suddenly, unexpectedly, the Lord disappears from his meditation. And Narada Muni opens his eyes. And the Lord, to encourage him, he reveals his mind to Narada Muni. O Narada, O virtuous one, you have only once seen my person, and this is just to increase your desire for me. Because the more you hanker for me, the more you will be freed from material desires, all material desires. That means a living entity means we all have desires. We are not like dead stone. Any spiritual path which says that you should become desireless is not a bona fide path. We all have desires as a spirit soul. It's coming from spirit soul, not from the body. How can we be desireless? But currently, in this material situation, we are desiring, we are thinking, we are feeling, we are willing materially. But when we become purified, when we think, feel, and will for the service of the Lord, we become gradually freed from all entanglement. And the more a person engaged in the loving service of the Lord, the more he acquires a hankering for it. So the Lord, he encouraged Narada Muni to become more attached to him, to yearn for him, hanker for the Lord's appearance and service. So the sincere devotee should go on with the sincere service of the Lord, and the Lord will give proper direction as to how and where it has to be done. So the Lord disappeared, and Narada Muni endeavored in that service, attached to the service of the Lord. So Yogastha means, as I explained, Krishna tells Arjuna that he should act in yoga, means concentrate the mind on Krishna by controlling the senses. And Kuru Karmani, Yogastaha Kuru Karmani. This is another thing we should learn from Bhagavad Gita. Krishna is always encouraging Arjuna to act. Krishna never encouraged Arjuna to sit idle. Uttishta, tasmad uttishta, tyaktvottishta, give up your lethargy and fight. Kuru karmani, niyatam kuru karmatvam, ma manusmara yudhyacha. Always Krishna is encouraging Arjuna to act. Krishna is not asking Arjuna to be lazy and be indifferent to whatever happens. So we have to act to the best of our ability for the pleasure of Krishna. But while doing that Kuru Karmani, our duty, we should be Siddhi Asiddhyoh Samo Bhutva. Gain or victory are Krishna's concern. Arjuna is simply advised to act according to the dictation of Krishna. So Arjuna's attachment should be to the Lord's wish, not for his personal gratification, not his personal wish. So there is attachment, there is motivation, there is work, everything is there, but everything is in proper place. No personal material motivation. This is called Sangam Tyaktva. Giving up attachment, personal attachment. So, therefore, why we are motivated is more important than what we are motivated for. So, two people, say, let's say Arjuna and another person, say Duryodhana, both are motivated to win. That's what they are motivated for. But why they are motivated? Arjuna is motivated to win for Krishna. Duryodhana is motivated to win for his own sense gratification. So, therefore, why we are motivated in our activity is more important than the activity itself. So, this Sangam Tyaktva, doing our work by giving up our personal attachment, is very important even on the material platform. Let's say you take a cricket match, for example. See, the goal is to play well and score the runs more than the opposition, but not get attached to any personal milestones or centuries, whatever it is. Then you are attached to a particular result. Your end goal is to win the match, not to hit a century, isn't it? Because you are attached to a particular result for yourself, that will weigh on you. You're circumspect in playing the ball. You'll have a mentality to stay at the crease and not hit any shots. But if you have no such attachment to scoring a century for yourself, then you will play according to the team's requirement. You'll play according to the merit of the ball. And in that process, you may even get, what to speak of a century, you may even get a double century, if the Lord wills. So we should not get disturbed whether we get out for a zero or we score a double century, because you didn't play with personal attachment. You had put the team's interest. You just tried to execute without any personal attachment. Similarly, office work. Completing that project is important than what part of the project I get. So people become so annoyed. Oh, this is the glorious part of the project, and this is the nasty or dirty part of the project. But Krishna's teaching is, no, don't be attached personally. Look at that activity that needs to be done. When the purpose becomes tainted with personal attachment, there won't be proper result. Even spiritually, if you speak, let's say we want to buy a beautiful property, a temple for the Lord, property for the Lord. So you look at the properties. Say you find one good property that you like so much. You like it so much, so nice, it's way out of budget. But because you are attached to it, you lose the actual focus and try to offer way more than it actually costs, and thereby lose money in bargaining and lose the Lord's money. But if you are detached for your personal attachment, then you can think properly whether this will cost so much, how much actually we can afford. See, our task is to find the beautiful property for the Lord, not this particular property. This particular property, you became attached to it. But because of that, you lost sight of your objective, why we are looking for. We talked about the student example yesterday. Students studying for exams. I'll give a different perspective. Say, a student is studying for exams. See, what is the ultimate objective for the student is to gain knowledge. But if the students gets attached to getting a particular rank or 99% marks, whatever it is, then he can lose sight of the actual goal, which is to get right knowledge, to learn what is the purpose of this article or this text I'm learning, this lesson I'm learning. that gets covered, and you'll study only for gaining the marks, gaining the grades. He will start to by heart things, not to understand things. So, similarly, aiming for ordinary worldly rewards, our efforts will be only for aspiring for those. But when we want to actually do it for the purpose of doing it, not tainted with anything else, then we attain the perfection of that activity. So, actually, detachment from result helps us perform very well in that activity. Like one time, somebody told me that their father had a chest pain in the middle of the night, and all the relatives were crying. And this man, he was totally bewildered, totally agitated, and he was unable to even function and think properly, unable to find means to take his father to hospital. But just at that time, as God sent, this person's friend came, and he looked at the situation, and with a cool mind, he was able to manage things, got the person to the hospital, got to the right doctor, got them the right medicine, and the father is saved. The family is relieved from the misery. So, how this friend could make these arrangements while this son he could not? Because in this case, the person's father was suffering, and the attachment of this person to the patient could not enable the person to do what his friend could do. The friend had no such attachments. So, of course, this doesn't mean one should not be attached to anybody. What I'm saying is that the principle of Krishna mentioning Sangam Tyaktva Dhananjaya, one should not be attached for my personal motivation. One should be doing it as a duty for Krishna. Our ultimate attachment should be for Krishna in anything, material activity or spiritual activity, importantly, spiritual activity. We have to give up any personal motivation. Ahaituki apratihata yayatma suprasidati. If we want to actually attain perfection in any activity, the right result in any activity, and importantly, we want to be happy beyond gain and loss, happiness, distress, victory or defeat. If we want to transcend, we have to give up our personal attachment and be attached to Krishna for his happiness. The other aspect we should also learn from this verse is that while doing our duty, we get a lot of comments, we get a lot of criticism, discouragement. We may be faced with constant failures, and we may think we are not capable of doing it. But we should not lose our heart because somebody says something, criticizes us, discourages us. We should not get distracted by temporary allurements or distractions on the side of the road and proceed towards destination. Sometimes there may be praise, sometimes there may be criticism. Siddhi asiddhi. But don't be attached to that. Your work should not get affected by siddhi asiddhi, criticism, praise, profit loss. Sometimes we get puffed up when we achieve some brilliant things. But we should know that many great people has bitten the dust after having tasted tremendous success in their lives. So we should remain in equanimity. Oh, success has come. Krishna has given that. If Krishna did not give, I would have been, see my situation few days ago, how I was. One should not get puffed up. Continue your duty, service for Krishna. Krishna bestowed, that's good. Krishna's mercy. But criticism comes or failure comes. One should not be shaken. Oh, this is a part of learning. This is part of learning. Krishna is making me go through this so that I can learn and become a better person. This is also Krishna's mercy. See how if you are situated in Krishna consciousness, how wonderful your life will become. So finally, Prabhupada says in the purport, the following of Krishna's dictation is real yoga, and this is practiced in the process called Krishna consciousness. This is what we practice. In life of Krishna consciousness, we just follow Krishna's dictation coming from the spiritual master. We perform our services to please Krishna, to please the spiritual master without becoming attached to it personally. So by Krishna consciousness only can one give up the sense of proprietorship. One has to become the servant of Krishna or the servant of the servant of Krishna. That is the right way to discharge duty in Krishna consciousness, which alone can help one to act in yoga. So I'll stop here. Anyone has any questions or comments, feel free to unmute yourself. Bhagavad Gita as it is ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai.